Okay, great. Then let's take our space, and let's not do this anymore. Because I'm really getting frustrated. And I'm really, really, really sick of this argument.
Sorry.
Okay? So let me go, and you go, and I'll speak to you in a couple hours. Okay? Okay? Why are you saying stop? May I go?
Please, it causes me so much stress when you leave, when you walk away from me with that. It's like you don't understand how much worse you're making this.
I can't believe this.
Please, you're making it worse for me.
Okay, I'm sorry for you.
Please, I'm only trying to tell you, Susie, you know, you're causing me immense stress right now when you walk away like that. There's no reason to be mad.
Then say goodbye. I haven't walked away. You're not saying goodbye. You won't let me fucking leave. Let me leave.
Stop rushing me! Stop pushing me in the corner and then poking me with a stick and then saying, why are you saying the words you want me to say? Stop poking me! Stop rushing me! Stop throwing me against the wall and going, what? You don't like that wall? You don't like the fucking wall? Stop pushing me! Want to be with me in life, then you need to actually do it. You need to actually take off your brain and forget that 5 hours ago you said the opposite. Otherwise, you can't keep throwing that around. You can't keep saying to me that this is something you care about. Is that what it's worth to you? Rules? Because I asked you to stay. Because I asked you to stay.
No, because you're fucking
What was it when you asked me to stay? What was it when you asked me to stay? What was it when you asked me to stay? In Australia, you said you promised me not to leave. You said you promised me not to leave. What did I do?
I thought you would change.
What did I do?
Not change.
What did I do? Did I stay or did I leave?
You changed.
Did I stay or did I leave?
You stayed and you didn't change and you were a fucking.
I stayed.
Yes, you were a cunt.
So I stayed. And I've been a cunt ever since, which is why you told me about every other day how you couldn't imagine your life without me, including today. So, which one? Does that seem normal to you? Does that seem normal to you? You told me tonight that you couldn't imagine your life without me, and now you're throwing your ring on the ground. Does that seem normal?
That's how you telling me.
That seems sober? You seem normal?
The definition of normal. You.
Does that seem normal?
You.
Does that seem normal to you?
Borderline personality disorder.
I'm borderline personality disorder now.
Without question.
When I've been consistent all night saying, don't go, don't fuck this all up. I'm not fighting with you anymore. Really sorry we just... I've been saying this to you the whole night. I'm really sorry we disagreed. You're not perfect. I said this 2 hours ago. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect.
I love you.
But we don't have to do this every time we disagree.
No, we don't.
Please.
We do.
Please. Come here.
And you have.
Please come here.
Insult.
Please come here. I'm not insulting you. I have not been insulting you. I love you. Johnny, what do you need me to do? I love you. Stop.
Smack me on the ear again. Smack my ear again. So it fucking resounds in my fucking brain. You like that? Huh? Myself? No. I will not deal with myself. And you want me to fucking be some kind of cursed goddamn parrot or a fucking weird frenzied dog? No, won't be it. No?
I'm trying to talk
shit. I'm not gonna be that shit, man.
Baby, stop.
No, I don't want to be with you. These are the fucking rules. Fuck that.
You're making this with them.
I'm making this up.
No one's fighting you.
I'm making this up. That, above all else, is an insult.
And what do you do for a living?
I produce esports events and design video games.
And in 2016, what did you do for a living?
I worked as the field assignment manager at TMZ.
What is TMZ?
TMZ is an entertainment news website and television show.
And what were your responsibilities as a field assignment manager for TMZ?
I was the go-between the news desk in the office and the reporters in the field, which you might know as paparazzi.
Approximately how many paparazzis were you in charge of?
At the time, it was about 20 in LA, a handful, maybe 3 in New York, and then 1 in DC.
And what were your responsibilities specifically as to the paparazzi?
It would be to dispatch paparazzi to various locations based on tips or just direction dictated by having a list of sort of hot spots where celebrities would be.
And how were those tips received?
They were received either through tips that we received through our tip line or directly through news producers in the office.
And were tips frequently received directly from sources?
Very often the case, yeah.
And who were the type of sources that TMZ received tips from?
They would receive tips from, oftentimes it would be publicists, managers, agents, or B-list celebrities.
Lawyers?
And lawyers, definitely.
How are tips verified?
Tips are verified by an extensive process. If they come in through our tip line, we have to verify who sent it, that the source is truthful, and so they have to add their contact information, which is a field in that on that website for like name, phone number, things like that.
And how long did that process typically take?
If we receive a tip through the tip line, it could take a while because that would need to be, if it was a tip, we would need to verify it. If it was media, such as photos or videos, that would need to be extensively verified to ensure that the person sending it is the copyright holder and that we would have the legal ability to air it and distribute it.
And while working for TMZ, were you involved in any assignments related to Ms. Heard?
I was.
What was the first time you recall working on an assignment related to Ms. Heard?
I believe it was May 27th, 2016.
And what was your role in that assignment?
For that, Ms. Heard was filing a restraining order at a courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. So I dispatched camera people to that location.
Under what circumstances would you normally send paparazzi to a courthouse?
Only if we had been informed prior. It's not by any means a celebrity hotspot. We would only ever send people there if we had been tipped off that something was occurring and there was somebody present there.
And what footage was TMZ trying to capture at the LA courthouse on May 27th, 2016?
We were trying to capture Amber leaving the courthouse and an alleged bruise on the right side of her face.
What was your team of paparazzi supposed to do while they were at the LA courthouse on May 27th, 2016?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay and foundation.
What were they supposed to do?
Right. She's asking for, I don't think there's a foundation.
I'll overrule the objection at this point.
Go ahead, Mr. Tremaine.
Can you state the question again?
What was your team of paparazzi supposed to do while they were at the Los Angeles courthouse on May 27th, 2016?
Their objective was to capture her leaving the courthouse, and then she was going to sort of stop and turn towards the camera to display the bruise on the right side of her face, the alleged bruise.
Did your team of videographers get the shot of Amber Heard?
We did.
What is the difference between receiving a tip from a news producer than any other source?
If it's any other source, it would have to be verified by copyright. If it was anything that was received directly through a news producer, then they go through that process to verify the source.
Did you do anything to verify the tip on May 27th, 2016 related to Amber Heard?
I did not,
Why not?
because it had come directly from a news producer.
Does that mean it had been verified?
It means that they had verified that tip and deemed that it was credible, and therefore a camera person needed to be dispatched.
After May 27th, 2016, were you involved in any other assignments related to Amber Heard?
Yes.
Can you tell me about those assignments?
The next one would have been August 6th, 2016, where she was giving a deposition.
So what did you do in relation to that tip?
I dispatched camera people to a parking lot adjacent to a law office in which she would be arriving to, so we could get the footage of her arriving for the deposition.
Do you typically send paparazzis to parking lots of law offices?
No, not at all.
Did you get the shot of Ms. Heard on August 6, 2016?
We did.
After August 6, 2016, were you involved in any other stories involving Ms. Heard?
Yes, it was.
And what story was that?
On the 12th, we received a video depicting Johnny Depp slamming some cabinets that was captured by Ms. Heard.
And what day was that?
I believe that was the August 12th
Of 2016?
of 2016, yes.
Can you describe to the jury how you received the video on August 12, 2016?
Yes, the video was sent in through our email tip line, which is an email distribution that goes to all the producers and to myself as the field assignment manager, because it often included celebrity locations. It came in as I recall,
Objection, hearsay.
He's just describing how it came in.
I think he's about to reveal hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll overrule for now. We'll see where it goes.
Please continue.
So I received that email, and it included a link from some unknown Dropbox type public website in which it contained that
Objection,
video.
Your Honor, hearsay. He's about to describe what comes from the Dropbox website, and that's...
So far, as you said, he's what's a link from the Dropbox. We'll see the next question. Go ahead, next question.
So you received a link. What was in that link?
In that link was the video of Johnny Depp smashing the cabinets.
And you received this video in your inbox, correct?
I did.
What did you do once you received that video?
We downloaded it. We alerted the web editor who was sitting next to me at the time. We downloaded it, and then were instructed by the news producer to do what we call slap bumpers and a bug on it, which is putting the dun 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 at the beginning end, and then putting a translucent watermark over it, which indicates copyright ownership.
After you did that, was it posted?
It was posted, yes.
Where was it posted?
It was posted to TMZ.com.
Did you do anything else related to Amber Heard on August 12, 2016?
Yes, I received a tip that Amber Heard would be arriving in LAX, and so I dispatched camera people to film that exit, or her arrival to LAX, rather.
And why did you do that?
I was instructed to.
How long does it take to post a story after media's been received by TMZ?
After media's been received, it could take any length of time depending on who owns the copyright.
How does TMZ obtain copyright over images and videos?
The only way to obtain copyright over media would be if we shot it ourselves, if it was sent to the tip line, source verified that it was from the original copyright owner, and then either purchased from that person or given to us. And then the third option would be if it was directly given to us by the copyright holder, like a direct source.
And how long does it take to copyright something TMZ has received through the tip line?
It can take a while because you have to extensively verify that that person owns the copyright. And then possibly, it depends also if you can even get in contact with the person, because they might not be super responsive immediately via phone or email that they provided. And then potentially you'd have to enter a negotiation with our clips and clearances department to figure out the cost of that media.
How long does it take for TMZ to obtain a copyright over something received directly from a source?
Something in the realm of 15 minutes just to do what I described before, which is putting bumpers and a bug on something and write the article and post it. It's pretty fast.
How much time had passed from the time you received the kitchen cabinet video to the time it was posted on TMZ?
About 15 minutes.
Did any other tabloids other than TMZ post this video?
Objection
No,
to leading and calls for hearsay.
Did any other tabloids? Mr. Tremaine, go ahead.
No, they did not.
And why not?
Because it was a TMZ exclusive.
And what does that mean?
It means the TMZ owns the copyright to it. So it can't be distributed by any other media source without backlinking to TMZ, and they wouldn't be able to upload that media without getting a copyright strike.
Have you seen the kitchen cabinet video that was played in this trial?
I have, yes.
How does that video that was played in this trial compare to the one you received on August 12, 2016?
When I had clicked the direct link that we received and watched the video in its entirety, it was much shorter than the video we had received, than the video that's been played in this trial. There was a bit at the beginning that was played here in which Ms. Heard is seemingly sort of setting up the camera and getting into position. And then there's a bit at the end where she's seemingly snickering and looks at the camera. That part was not present in what we received.
Did TMZ edit the video?
No, not even a little. When we receive something and it's edited, there's a clear indicator because there's sort of a journalistic practice that uses when there's an edit, you do what's called like a white flash transition, which covers the entire screen with white to very clearly indicate to everybody there was an edit here for time or whatever, just to make it a little more compelling. But in this case, it was not edited, as I was staring at the machine that edited it and present for the entirety of receipt to publishing.
When was the next time you worked on an assignment related to Amber Heard?
It was, there was the time where we went to the airport. And then the day after that, because she had flown in for the deposition, because I think the first time didn't work out. So she was arriving again for the deposition in that same parking lot adjacent to a law office.
And what's that, August 13th, 2016?
That was August 13th, yeah.
And what was your assignment on August 13th, 2016?
To dispatch camera people to that parking lot at a specific time in order to film Amber Heard arriving for the deposition.
How did you know that tip was legitimate?
It came from a news producer.
While you worked at TMZ, did you ever receive any communications from Mr. Depp or his camp?
I did not.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes. So, how do you know what video was shown at this trial?
I was alerted by a friend that TMZ was being kind of talked about in this trial, and so I had seen a clip of that.
So you watched some of this trial?
Correct.
Okay. When did you first reach out to counsel for Mr. Depp?
I believe that was 6 days ago, whatever that date would be. I'd have to do that.
All right. And then you received a subpoena, I think yesterday, in care of your attorney, Cindy Hickox, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Cindy Hickox represents Christy Dombrowski, Kate James, Robin Baum. and
Objection,
Debbie
Your Honor.
Gordon. Were you aware of
Calls for
that?
speculation.
Overruled.
Were you aware of that?
No.
Now, if you don't have information that's helpful to this case, then you wouldn't be a witness, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained, sustained, next question.
I'm not aware.
Okay, you know this case is being televised, right?
I am aware that there are cameras.
And so this gets you your 15 minutes of fame, doesn't it?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
I can ask that question.
Overruled.
So I stand to gain nothing from this. I'm actually putting myself kind of in the target of TMZ, a very litigious organization, and I'm not seeking any 15 minutes here. Though you're welcome to speculate. I could say the same thing by taking Amber Heard as a client for you.
A little argumentative, don't you think?
Oh, hardly. I find that to be purely logical. Thank you.
Now, are you aware that Mr. Depp's attorneys were well aware of the TRO that was going to be presented on May 27th?
Objection calls for speculation.
Were you aware of that?
Lack of foundation.
Overruled if you can answer it.
Can you restate the question?
Were you aware that Mr. Depp's divorce attorneys were aware that Amber Heard was going in to seek a TRO on May 27th?
I don't think I understand the question. I don't think so, no.
Okay. Do
kind of a
you
complicated
know whether Blair Burke, one of Mr. Depp's divorce attorneys, had a very close relationship with TMZ at that time?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled. If he knows.
I was not aware of that.
Okay, and when you said that you were dispatched twice, once to film Amber in a parking lot for the deposition, and then it didn't work out, and so you had to do it another time, how did you know it didn't work out?
Because TMZ.com posted an article saying as much.
Okay.
And I was not dispatched.
Do you
I
know
worked in the
why the deposition did not work out?
I'd have to reference the article, I forget.
So do you know?
I didn't write that story. I wasn't involved in the
Do
actual
you know
journalism of that.
which side? Do you know which side would have known or not known whether that deposition was going to work out? In other words, the people representing Mr. Depp or the people representing Ms. Heard?
I wouldn't know.
Okay. And then the video clip. You don't know who provided that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Not testifying to
I've
that.
never heard.
All right, redirect.
Mr. Tremaine, why did you contact me in relation to this case?
I saw that there was a discrepancy with like the video that was shown here and the video that I know I had received. So I had no interest in testifying. I had reached out simply to maybe try to help with the timeline of things or help with the case in any way, just by virtue of understanding the timeline of the stories that were published and kind of how that can be unclear. But I had no idea I'd be on the stand.
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, sir, you're free to go.
Thank
Thank you. All right.
on, listeners, it's time for me to continue answering your questions of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial as a follow-up to the 50 plus hours of reaction videos that I made. Let's do that now. Ronan says, do you worry that by giving Amber so much benefit of the doubt, despite the overwhelming evidence against her and her credibility, that you might be unintentionally harming victims that see a lot of their abuser in Amber Heard and her lies? End of question. Yeah, absolutely. I'm terrified of that. I'm terrified of hurting either end of the spectrum regarding that. And apparently I have done that, which is depressing and, keeps me up at night. And by the way, I do a lot to try to mitigate that, right? By saying, I don't know, and it could be true. A lot of those caveats I say because I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying as somehow ammunition against people who step forward, particularly women. I hope that comes across. Your student from another university says, do you agree that Johnny's expert witnesses were of higher quality than Amber's? If not in content of testimony, but also their attitude and ability to remain objective. It seemed many of Heard's experts were not only providing dubious opinions, like that hand doctor. Yeah, seemingly, when you compare Curry and Shaw to Hughes and Spiegel and the hand doctors, it seemed like, wow, the Johnny Depp team had seemingly much better expert witnesses. And who knows why that is. It could be a budget issue. It could be that the data on Amber Heard's side was hard to stand by, and thus the expert people were really scrambling to try to make it work for them. Who knows? But I will say that Dr. Hughes did a great job. And there's some things that strategically I wouldn't have done if I were her. But there were a lot of things that she did really well. And if you're biased against Amber Heard, then she's ridiculous and a terrible human being. And there are some things that she did that was strange, like asking to read her report while she was on the stand. Juno says, I am confused about Dr. Hughes' testimony and contradictory findings compared to Dr. Curry's. Can an average person trust these professionals because of their contradictions? End of question. Yeah, to be clear, Curry and Hughes did a great job. They did what they're supposed to do. But yeah, it certainly makes us look bad. At the very least, makes us look like we don't know what we're doing, and at worst, it makes us look corrupt, because apparently if you pay enough money, you can get a forensic psychologist to say anything. So yeah, it's not a good look, and I've been talking about that throughout my videos. And it was one of the several reasons why I didn't go into that field. I'm trained as a forensic psychologist, but as I started to get into it a little bit, I was like, and there were a lot of reasons as to why I didn't like it that I've detailed in other videos. Marcus says, how come you seem to still think she is telling the truth about being abused? Please review more of the evidence. Again, it's not really a question, it's more of a criticism, and I get it. It could be wrong, as I've been saying. I don't know if she's telling the truth, one. Two, I don't understand how people could conclude from my videos that I believe everything that she says. I mean, if anything, I would think people would be like, wow, you seemingly are against Amber Heard, because, and I want to remind people that the main bullying that I'm getting online, people that are trying to take me down, are the pro Amber Heard people. So if you believe I'm pro Amber Heard or believing her, like, there's a whole other set of people that believe that I don't believe her enough and think I'm ridiculous because of that. So I don't know. I would think that if people actually watched my videos, they'd be like, oh, well, clearly he has concluded after reviewing the evidence that she's lying a lot of the time, especially about the key incidents of abuse, of physical violence. So I don't understand why that's hard to swallow for people. It's there. It's what I agree with what the jury, I think, concluded. So, but I get it, I guess, that I could be wrong about everything, and I probably am wrong. I'll tell you, I'm positive I'm wrong about a lot of things. I know you all are wrong about a lot of things too, because none of us were there. I mean, clearly there's a lot of people that are wrong because everyone has varying opinions about this. So clearly there's a large set of us that are wrong, and I accept that, and that's just how it's going to be because none of us were there. Roy says, do you think it's fair to the judge-jury verdict and Johnny Depp for Amber Heard to continue her press tour, defaming not only him, but misrepresenting the facts? I don't know. But what's the alternative? Do we prevent her from speaking to the press? Yeah, I don't think so. Could Johnny Depp go after her because she is continuing to spread supposed lies, or at least alleged lies. Yeah. But what the attorneys will tell me is Johnny Depp has already won. He won the case because he was trying to change the public opinion. He has clearly done that. So why would he do more? And it could be argued pretty well that Amber Heard is not helping herself by continuing to do what you call the press tour. So you go on, I believed you tried to be unbiased as humanly as possible, which is really admirable, but do you think you might have been subconsciously biased towards one side as to offset the secondhand information you got from other sources, wife, internet, and friends? Am I subconsciously biased? That's the main question there. Undoubtedly, all of us are subconsciously biased. There's no way around being biased. None of us are objective. It's just obvious. So yeah, I absolutely was subconsciously biased, and I tried to, unearth those biases to try to account for them, but by definition, there could be biases that I didn't manage to unearth, or I just didn't know to even look for. So yeah, I was unconsciously biased. I was biased consciously and unconsciously. Regarding my wife, I don't know why you're bringing my wife friends into this, but my wife had a very similar attitude as me. As we started watching the trial, we both basically were concluding that we didn't know, and it kind of seemed like both people were being at least somewhat abusive to each other. But anyway, and then in terms of friends, none of my friends watched the trial. They had no idea what was going on. So I wasn't biased by them. In terms of the internet, yeah, the internet could have absolutely affected me because the internet was clearly pro Johnny Depp for the most part, and I tried to account for that. You go on. Amber Heard released a few pages of her therapist notes in her interview. People have found out that the handwriting is strikingly similar to her own, and it was written in longhand. Some psychiatrists have commented that they never use longhand, and no therapist will ever write notes in this manner. What is your opinion on this? Thank you, Dr. Kirk. And a question. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be. It's hard to evaluate handwriting, by the way. But regarding longhand and shorthand, it depends on what you mean by therapist notes. It depends on what she means by therapist notes, because we have progress notes and treatment plans and assessments, and we have another category of notes in which we call psychotherapy notes or process notes. So in a nutshell, there's the official record in the file, in the client file, and that official record is accessible to the client. It's accessible to other providers. They can pull the file and look at it. When you go to the doctor, your doctor writes a progress note, and other doctors and other physicians or yourself, you can actually just look at that. In fact, a lot of those notes are online these days, right? In fact, probably all of them. So those are the progress notes, the treatment plans, assessments, and they need to be readable. They can't be in shorthand. Whereas if you are taking process notes or psychotherapy notes, these are notes just for ourselves. And it's allowed within HIPAA to have those because we want physicians and mental health workers to be able to make a little note to themselves without worrying that somehow they have to make it articulate or understandable to other people. And so I could go down a whole rabbit hole in terms of the ethics and the practices around this sort of thing. But so, for example, when you're seeing a therapist in that quintessential, stereotypical way, keeping notes, that's usually the process notes, and those things go in a separate file, and they're not accessible to the client, and they often are in shorthand, because why would you write in full sentences, Like for me, with my psychotherapy notes, I have all these abbreviations and shorthand things that I write that I know what they mean, but other people wouldn't know what they mean, or at least they could be misinterpreted. But when I write a progress note that goes in the official file for the client to see, or for example, or the insurance company pulls the file for whatever, that's never happened to me, but it could happen, then all that has to be written in a way that's understandable to everyone. It needs to be in longhand, it needs to be clear, and it can't have abbreviations, and it can't be in shorthand. I mean, some physicians, some mental health people might claim that you could have some shorthand in there, but I don't like that, and I don't do that, and I don't train people to do that. It actually bothers me. For example, if I'm supervising someone and I pull their file because I'm overseeing their practice, and a big part of that is monitoring their paperwork, and a big part of that is monitoring what they're doing with their clients, and I look at their progress notes and I don't understand what they're saying, well, then that is a bad progress note. Even if they write in a shorthand that I think that I understand, trend, sometimes with, instead of client, it'll be CX in terms of treatment, it'll be TX, recommendations, it's RX, all these kinds of things. And although I know what they mean by that, I will tell them don't put that there, because if the client pulls their file and they don't understand what's in there, then you have failed in terms of your documentation. In fact, I was trained that your progress notes are supposed to be readable at a 10th grade level. It shouldn't be at your level. As a therapist, you have a lot of education, you've written a lot of things, and you might be able to write things that are very complicated, use, elaborate vocabulary, but we're trained to write at a 10th grade level, maybe even at an 8th grade level, because your clients might literally be in the 8th grade and they need to be able to read their file as well, but also you don't know people's reading level. So you need to write in a simple way, an understandable way, and a clear way. And it's a big stereotype that isn't true, that, all doctors and all mental health therapists write in this like chicken scratch that it's like impossible to read. That was certainly true in the past, but now it's all computer, so there's not any penmanship issues, right? And also, there are some people who still keep hand progress notes, but it's more and more rare as time goes on, particularly younger and newer therapists. Now, could some people claim that everyone they know, including themselves, write progress notes in shorthand? Yeah, I don't recommend that for the reasons I stated, but for people that come forward and say, like, psychiatrists never use longhand when they write their notes it's just not true. Jahane from Morocco says, I see a lot of misinformation spreading on social media about domestic violence victims that might be harmful for victims wanting to come forward. I would love for you to discuss that. Yeah, I feel like I've already discussed that, but yeah, there's a lot of misinformation going around saying like, we knew it, women are evil, or they're always lying, and borderline people, we need to discount them. Yeah, it's pretty awful. Listener Grace says, do you think that part of the reason it is harder to identify male abuse victims is that many men may have different reactions to abuse than what is currently measured, including less likelihood to report actually feeling unsafe? Do I think that part of the reason it is harder to identify male abuse victims is that many men have different reactions to abuse? Yes and no. It's a bit of a myth that men abuse victims, and I hear people talking this way sometimes. They'll say like, well, when women are abusive, they're more emotional. When men are abusive, they're more physical. And certainly there's some research demonstrating there's a tendency, but I think that misleads people to believe that women who are abusive are not physical, or at least they're not as physical. And on average, they're not. Of the people who murder their spouses as a result of IPV, the vast majority are men. So there are some things, there's some outlier examples that you can point to, but the notion that somehow there's this universal difference, or at least like a 90-10% difference between men and women regarding how intimate partner violence is perpetrated or the experience of a victim is, I think, misleading. But could a male victim of intimate partner violence be more likely to puff up, to try to stand their ground more often than a woman victim? Yeah, even though a man is being victimized, it's possible that given his socialization or his size difference, that he won't look as quintessential as a victim because of those reasons. Yeah, that can happen, and that could have been happening in this case. Listener Lisa from Illinois says, what's the best way to deal with a borderline person who will not accept the outcome of an issue and continues to push it? Like Amber Heard continuing to talk to the media, and who knows if she'll ever accept the verdict, even if denied at appeal. End of question. So to answer your question, you're saying, what's the best way to deal with a borderline person like Amber for not accepting an outcome of an issue? I don't know if I can answer that question. It's a case-by-case basis. But if you're asking, like, say you're Amber Heard's friend or something, and you're like, I don't think this is wise. Why doesn't she accept the verdict? How come she's going down this road? It's not helping her. You could see a friend actually believing that about her. How do you deal with that? Well, yeah, compassion, listening, trying to convince in a soft way without triggering the person. It might not work. Patroness Becca, I like that, Patroness Becca from the interwebs says, assuming any of the hypotheses of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are close to accurate, should either one get into a romantic relationship, or should they spend time in therapy first? End of question. Yeah, it's a good question. Sometimes we simplify the recovery or the healthy path to taking a break from relationships. And certainly if people make that decision, there's a lot of wisdom to that. But somehow saying that if Johnny Depp or Amber Heard were to engage in an intimate relationship soon after all this is happening, and of course this was 6 years ago that they broke up, right? If either of them were to engage in a relationship, that would be unhealthy. That's a myth. It's not demonstrated by science. So whether or not they're in a relationship soon after, I don't think is really the issue. The issue is that the two of them need a lot of treatment. If the allegations are accurate, if my conceptualization is accurate, which I can never know, but for someone with at least moderate to severe borderline personality disorder, they need a lot of treatment. They need DBT potentially, but particularly they need a specialist in relational psychotherapies that works long-term and specializes with borderline personality disorder. It's a very specialized kind of treatment. It's long-term. It could literally take 7, 8, 15 years sort of a thing. I've treated people along those lines, and it does take a long time. Sometimes they'll do stints with DBT or other kinds of treatments, maybe even a psychiatrist on the side, but the bulk of recovery is in that corrective experience. And so that's what I would throw out there as a recommendation. Possible sobriety treatment for Amber Heard as well, I don't know. She didn't seem to have as much of a problem as Johnny Depp did, but there seemed to be some reliance on substances in some ways, which a lot of people who are suffering will turn to, and it does compound problems. With Johnny Depp, clearly he needs a lot of drug and alcohol treatment and perhaps group work in terms of 12-step group. And I don't know, maybe he's already done that because it's been 6 years since all this stuff happened. But if that were still an issue, which I think it is, given the way he was talking on the stand, he would benefit greatly by attaining sobriety. And parallel to that would be treatment for his traumas, which I don't think he's ever really done. So and that could take a long time too. It might not be as long as moderate to severe borderline treatment, but it could be 5-10 years because it's probable that he suffers from a lot of complex trauma. So I think they would both benefit from that, regardless of whether or not they're in a relationship. Fairy Nuff says, what were the key differences between your before and after impressions? Were there any massive surprises for you? End of question. Yeah, I was surprised at how severe the allegations were. I know a lot of you knew the allegations prior to the trial, but I didn't. I thought that there were minor pushing incidents, but when Johnny Depp started talking about what he was alleging that she did, the bottle and the finger, I didn't know that finger incident at all until I saw it in the trial. I was like, what? Just kind of a balloon from there in terms of the allegations. I was like, whoa, this is like intense. I was surprised. Then you ask, what was your most memorable point? That's a good question. I don't know. I would say just Amber Heard's testimony. I think she was on the stand a lot, maybe the most out of everyone. I don't know. But the way she came across, the defensiveness she had about odd details, like the pledge versus the donation thing, the way she would talk to the jury, I think that will stick with me the longest. Other things would be like the grumpy Camille, Elaine, Dr. Curry, Dr. Hughes, the audio recordings. I think the main thing will be Amber Heard on the stand, Dr. Curry on the stand, and Dr. Hughes on the stand. I think those things they stick with me. And then you go on to say, on a personal note, I wanted to offer my heartfelt thanks for shining light on areas I didn't even know I needed answers to. This trial triggered me so much, and yet I felt a strange compulsion to watch it to the bitter end. I'm 100% convinced that your content was what stopped me from being a bumbling manic mess during the odd compulsion of watching the trial. You've helped me understand why I was so triggered and gave me a sense of understanding as to people and the traumas of my life, which, although has not offered me peace, has allowed me to better come to terms with personal experiences. You're a rock star. Thank you. Heart emoji. Well, you're very welcome, Fairy Enough. And thanks for that. I needed that. Tammy from Calgary, Canada says, do you think sentences should be different for people who have a mental health disorder? For example, Amber Heard possibly having borderline personality disorder. I've already, I think, answered that question. So it depends is the answer. Tanya from Sydney, Australia says, did this trial surprise you based on your experiences as a therapist? Also, were you surprised by how strongly people in society and media and social media felt about this case? End of question. Yes, I was surprised by society. If you would have told me prior to the trial that their response would be as it was, I'd be like, that doesn't sound likely. I think some people will be interested, but not literally everyone. I mean, everyone knew about it, or seemingly anyway. YouTube commenter Ms. Corleone from Massachusetts says, borderline and narcissistic personality disorder patients are not likely to seek treatment, I have heard. What is the more likely scenario for them to seek serious psychological treatment? End of question. Well, first off, it's not true that people with borderline personality disorder don't seek treatment, because they often do. I don't know how they compare to the general population, but I would take a guess anecdotally and say that at the very least borderline individuals seek treatment as much as the general population, if not a lot more, because they know they're suffering. People with borderline are very aware of their suffering and their emotional pain, and are in a frequent state of distress, if not a constant state, a chronic state, and so they are often looking for answers. And one of the answers that they will look to almost always, if you live in a community with a therapist, is to go to that therapist. So a lot of people with borderline seek, but people with narcissistic personality disorder, yeah, it's well known in the research that they don't seek treatment very often, but they still seek treatment. They will seek treatment for relationship problems, depression, intimate partner violence, addiction, loneliness. Loneliness is a frequent one for people with narcissism, because they often do feel lonely at the bottom of everything. They've felt lonely their entire life. Marcus says, we have seen some indications of Amber Heard having abandonment issues. Also, her way of splitting Depp into two very different persons. Also, the way she switches emotions when talking with Johnny Depp during their discussions. Can we really think that her therapist sessions were honest, considering Hughes evaluated her and found no indication of borderline? Even though she might not be found to have borderline, having a therapist not see any indications of the disorder seems highly unlikely if she was being honest in the sessions. End of question. Yeah, so I think what you're asking, Marcus, is given that it's likely that she has at least some degree of borderline, if not severe, how is it possible that her past therapist saw no indication of that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, so one, she might not actually have borderline, so we don't know. But if she did, moderate to severe, there are a number of possibilities. One, we did hear that one of the therapists, he refuses or prefers not to use diagnostic labels of any kind. So it's possible that either he did see signs of what one might call borderline and just phrased it a different way, or he just actually actively pushes against anything even remotely coming close to a conceptualization. There are therapists out there like that. A lot of humanistic therapists are like this, and there's a lot of wisdom to that model. I don't ascribe to that entirely, but this notion that when we start labeling people as problems, it kind of locks us in and prevents the client from being able to grow, prevents us from approaching the situation with optimism or with openness to the client. And so there are therapists out there like that. And so even if they saw things like distortions and and whatnot, they wouldn't even necessarily label it a distortion in their mind, because they're more trying to use their model, which I won't go into. Another possibility is that the individual therapist did in their minds identify, oh, that's borderline. Clearly she has moderate severe borderline, but they did not write it down in their records, and when asked about their opinion, they didn't say that. And there are a lot of therapists in that camp too, because they understand that there's so much stigma around borderline. So for example, for me, when I don't know the landscape and say I have only assessed someone for a little bit of time and I haven't even talked with the client yet about the conceptualization, well, actually, in both situations, when I'm conferring in that situation, but also when I initially introduce the idea of borderline to a client, I often will not use the word borderline because I don't know if they've absorbed the stigma around it, and I also don't want them Googling it because there's so much misinformation about borderline on the internet. And so I will use relationally traumatized. I will use schema language about abandonment and betrayal, which I think you heard me use a lot of that language in the reaction videos, because one, it's more descriptive, and two, those phrases don't have stigma around it. And so when I will confer with someone, I don't know them, I won't I don't know what they think about borderline. So I will use more descriptive language. Now, in the end, with a client, I do want to introduce the word borderline because there are resources around that. But if I ever do introduce that, or I think they might intuit that's what I'm getting at, I have a long shtick with, maybe a few minutes where I explain to them that they have to be very careful about going on the internet. They have to be very careful about talking about that in public because there's a lot of myths and misinformation that could really harm you if you read that material or told people. There's another possibility that if she does have borderline, which we don't know, was very good at convincing her therapist that her narrative was not distorted and was accurate. And I've seen that before as well. If you have therapists that are untrained, they don't know what they're doing, and I would say a good percentage are untrained and don't know what they're doing when it comes to personality disorders, or even when it just comes to a client having mild distortions. Like the amount of times that I've heard that it seemed to be anyway, that the therapist was just buying the client's entire narrative without any sort of skepticism at all or any kind of clinical acumen. I've heard that a lot is the point. And so could that have happened with Amber Heard's therapist? Yeah, I don't tend to want to believe that, but it's it's possible. Ninva from Sweden says, are you going to do a reaction video on Amber Heard's last cross-examination? I would really love it. I waited so long for it. End of question. Well, I thought I did, but I might have just summarized it. And I get it. I mean, I don't know. I've known this for a long time in my reaction videos to reality TV shows, but there are times when I'll watch something, but I think, I don't know if I can provide any kind of value to this, because that's always what I'm thinking. I'm always thinking, like, how can I provide value to people? And I don't want to just react, like, whoa, that was weird. Let's watch some more. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like I'm adding any value. I might be confirming or validating your feelings or something, but I don't know. I try to use this. I try to use my strengths. I try to use that this is a psychology, YouTube channel. I'm trying to provide the psychological perspective, and me just being like, whoa, is, I don't know. I feel like there are other channels that will do that. So there are times when I'm watching something and I'm just like, well, there's not really much I can say. And I'm sure everyone knows what my reaction was to that because that was pretty absurd or that was weird or that was funny or that was notable or something, but I don't have anything to say. So by the end of the trial, everything that I could say had already been said. And so if I had watched her cross-examination towards the middle of my experience, then I probably would have said more because there was a lot of information that provoked new statements from me. And that's the other thing that I try not to do is I try not to repeat myself. I almost never succeed in that, but imagine if I didn't try how often I would repeat myself because I don't want to bore people. And so when I was watching her cross-examination, I'd be like, oh, maybe I could say, I'd be like, well, you've said that 3 times already, like over the past few weeks. There's no point in repeating that and boring the viewers. So now, of course, some people interpret that as me being biased and not outing Amber Heard, not highlighting the problems in her cross-examination. I don't believe that to be true about me. In fact, by the time she was being cross-examined, and I believe I did react to it to some extent, to me, especially since I knew the verdict, the trial was basically over at that point. There was so much evidence pointing in the direction of her lying and her allegations being at least dubious, if not just flat out fabricated, that her cross-examination was deft, but I also was like, I don't know if we need to beat this dead horse. Plus, maybe a bias for me was it felt like piling on. All right, final question. Social worker from Montreal, Canada, she says, how do you do? I'll say, doing well. Going on, I'm a mental health clinician and I ended up with the same conceptualization as you about the mutually abusive dynamic between Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp. Just chiming in here. Did I say that? Did I say that? I mean, I guess I did. That, again, I said if I put my money down, it was like a 70-30 mutual abuse with Amber Heard doing 70% of the abuse. So I guess I did. I don't know. If someone asked me, what is your concept? What do you think happened? I would say, I don't know. That's my conceptualization. I wasn't there. If you asked me for my conceptualization, I would say, I don't know. But if I had to put my money down, yeah. A colleague of mine who advocates for more resources for men victimized by women made me realize how insidious gender bias probably tainted my view by asking me to reverse the genders. May I ask if you ever wondered about how you would have conceptualized the dynamic in the trial if the gender roles were reversed? End of question. Yeah, so what you're saying, social worker from Montreal, is that you conceptualized mutual abuse, but then someone challenged you and said, well, what if the genders were reversed? Would you still believe that it was mutual abuse? And I think, one, that analogy is interesting for sure, and I did that throughout a lot of my reaction videos. I'm like, what if we reverse the genders? Number two is that it's not exactly a fair analogy because of sexism and body size and privilege and that kind of thing. But it is a worthy thought experiment, as long as you realize it's not exactly apples to apples, right? And could I have changed my opinion about it? I don't think so, because the data was there. And I'm very familiar with women who are abusive and men who are victims. I'm very familiar with that. I've treated many. In fact, if I was just to take a mental survey of, well, when I did a lot of the court-mandated work, it was usually men perpetrators. But if I just think about like my non-court-mandated clients, there isn't an obvious gender trend there. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Tune in next time when I answer more questions. So I'm going to do a Patreon-only episode for the patron questions, but I have a lot of emails that I have saved about the trial that I'm also going to get to, because I'm a completist and I like to go through everything. So, and by the way, if you send more questions about the trial, unless it's really a poignant question, I'm probably not going to answer it on the air, because I kind of want to be done with this whole thing, honestly. So it's been great. It's been very satisfying to me professionally and as a content provider, but I want to relax a little bit. Although I'm starting to go into the Teal Swan rabbit hole, which is way more complex than I thought it was going to be. But the difference with, just so you know, the difference with the Teal Swan series that I plan on doing, like with the trial, it was happening as I was making videos, and so the news cycle kind of compelled me to get them out as fast as possible, because if I released an episode 3 years from now about the trial, it wouldn't be relevant anymore. So I was coming out real fast, and so it was a very grueling time in my life the past few months. With the Teal Swan thing, there was a documentary on Hulu recently, but even that was a while ago. But the controversy around her and the content that I can comment on has been going on for many years. So there's no emergency that I have to somehow get all that content out, in a timely manner. So I can be a lot more chill. In fact, I can be the sort of chill that I usually am, where I'm just like, well, what do I do today? Whereas with the trial, it was every day, 16 hours a day. I mean, it was rough. And so I just kind of want to be done with that phase of my life. Maybe I'll revisit it at some point, but anyway. So yeah, if you have a comment, leave a comment below, email in, whatever. But if you have a specific question, again, unless it's really like some massively important question, there's a chance that I'm just not going to get to it. And everyone out there, take care of yourself. Know that there's a plurality of experiences and opinion. Your opinion matters. You are worthy of your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion completely. So are other people, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.